a vision. We executed on that vision, and we produced historic results. And the people of this state have responded in record fashion. Now, while our country flounders due to failed leadership in Washington, Florida is on the right track.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, nearly a 20-point difference over Charlie Crist. Following that decisive victory, the winning continues up and down the ballot there. Republican Senator Marco Rubio cruised to a third term after defeating challenger Val Demings. All this solidifies the state's red standing and lays out the blueprint for the grand old party. Here's one headline in the New York Post. Ron DeSantis shows he's future of the GOP. You see it, the future, DeSantis. And in the Wall Street Journal, the DeSantis Florida tsunami is what they're calling it. There's even talk of a 2024 presidential run.
I think Ron DeSantis got a huge boost and is much more likely to run for president now than we would have guessed. I think DeSantis is probably the biggest single winner of the night, and that means he will overnight be, for everybody who doesn't want President Trump, Ron DeSantis will now become far and away the leading alternative and a superstar. And frankly, you look at the size of his margins, you look at his reaction to the hurricane. As somebody said to me this morning, he just gets things done.
Kellyanne Conway also gets things done. Former Trump senior counselor and Fox News contributor. Let's get some things done now in focus. What do you make of Ron DeSantis? And it wasn't just a little bit, it is a decisive win.
It's huge. And now they have a veto-proof majority in the state legislature. We flipped 4 House seats there, including with Ana Paulina Luna, Hispanic woman in Pinellas County, a county that went for Obama, Trump, Biden. And
so they're all over the place.
But the depth and the width of the DeSantis win and Marco Rubio's win as well cannot be overstated in our third largest state. And I believe that last night one of the sub-themes is, do I have confidence in your competence as my governor? And sadly for the Republican Party, some of these Democratic governors got reelected in Michigan and Kansas and Wisconsin, certainly gave it up in Pennsylvania with a very deeply flawed Republican candidate on the ballot there who I think hurt Oz and some of those races down ballot. But in Florida, you look at Miami-Dade, a lot of talk about that. You look at Palm Beach County. These were 2 of the 3 counties in the hot seat when it came to hanging chads 22 years ago. When you look at Miami-Dade, I think Trump lost it by 30 points. DeSantis lost it by 20, then Trump lost it by 7, and now DeSantis won it. So you see this, you know, when you have trends over time, and it's not just a sugar high because of one election, those trends are durable and lasting. I look beyond Florida also. We have Iowa was a clean sweep. We're picking up congressional seats on Long Island, in New Jersey, in California. So I think everything all being told, we're going to have a decent night, and Nancy Pelosi will no longer be speaker.
As you were talking about Miami-Dade County, we popped up some numbers. Let's put those back up just so we can see those. And that's, you know, how the vote has gone from 2018 to 2022. And just look at where Ron DeSantis has gone. I mean, what is it about Miami-Dade that's necessarily changing? You did have a lot of New Yorkers move there.
Yes.
During the pandemic.
But Harris, they left their ideology behind here in New York. Yeah. That's a concern. People like me who look at data, that's a concern that we always have, which is that when you have this influx of folks who are, you know, coming from blue areas, blue states, blue cities, will they leave their blue state ideology
Arizona
behind
is
or bring it
asking
with
that
them?
same thing with all the Californians.
And it's very clear in Florida that they're so impressed with the competence of Governor DeSantis. And let me say something else about him. He does a lot of press conferences on any number of issues, workforce development, the taking on Disney, education, keep the kids in class and keep businesses open, and so on and so forth. It's still a state that has no state income tax, which is very attractive. He's kept that. But it's also a state that has a surplus, so he can spend money on things that people need and not the way they do it in Washington. And I think most importantly, nobody can see a hurricane coming. And his test of leadership in just the last several weeks with the hurricane, I think people saw a different Ron DeSantis. And what you never know what you're made of, the metal, M-E-T-T-L-E, until things like that happen. But it's a big night. And obviously, he also, spent some of his political currency going and campaigning for other Republican gubernatorial candidates across the country.
So talk to that issue, if you would. You saw Glenn Youngkin do that, governor of Virginia,
Yes.
do that as well. How much of that is important? It's not an endorsement as much as it is, these are people in the party who've won on certain issues. So it's not just some big name coming in to kind of, prop you up by the shoulder pad. And but DeSantis wins on the issue consistently of, I'm going to get things done that nobody expects, like the causeway connecting Sanibel after a hurricane. Everybody said that was going to take. Engineers I talked to, months to a year. He got it done in less than 60 days. And then Glenn Youngkin on the parents issue. So why is that happening in this party, but it wasn't necessarily happening across the aisle?
Well, it's not. And look, they were scaring the Democrats. What were their closing arguments? Scaring, scolding voters. They have to wake up today.
So what worked for them?
What worked for the Democrats? I think abortion was a bigger issue at the ballot box than people anticipated, because when you looked at the overall polling, abortion had faded as a top issue compared to June, July, and August, when it was dominating Google Trends. But Planned Parenthood, the pro-abortion groups, they spent over $400 million. That's, probably all told $500 million. And I think it was very important, and they probably banked those votes a little bit early. When you ask people what's the most important issue, abortion may fade a little bit because people are just, they're overtaken by inflation, and they're overtaken by their concern about the border and for some crime, and certainly parents and education. I'm grateful every day that Glenn Youngkin and Ron DeSantis are strong Republican conservative governors who are unafraid to take chances. And we have many. Kim Reynolds got reelected in Iowa, Greg Abbott in Texas, McMaster in South Carolina. Certainly we have very strong Republican governors. And I think last night people said, you're competent. You've done a great job. I'm going to reward you for that and have 4 more years with you. I also think we're going to pick up the governorship in Nevada. I've been saying that all week. Joe Lombardo, former sheriff of Clark County,
we haven't talked
veteran,
about that.
and Sisolak, who is the governor, sitting governor, Democrat in Nevada, he locked down his state. If you look at the lost learning and the small businesses that have disappeared forever in that state, Harris, that's going to cost him that governorship.
Talk to me about what you anticipate to come next. We've got toss-up states. We know we were just covering Wisconsin because we have a reporter on the ground there. So we're waiting moment by moment to confirm it here at Fox, what's going on in that race. But, there were some calls, well, you could see as many as 54 seats for Republicans. What happened?
Well, we would never have 54 seats in 2022. That would never happen because there weren't 54 seats available. You're never going to have a 1994 situation or even a 2010 63-seat shellacking for President Obama, as he called it. Why? Because, well, number one, the Republicans banked 14 of those seats in 2020. And not a single Republican incumbent lost in the House in 2020. That's almost unheard of. Plus, they turned 14 blue to red, even though Biden became president. Number two, both parties are guilty of gerrymandering and redistricting in a way that has left so few competitive seats that you just can't grab it. I think that my predictions were somewhere between 20 and 22. That may fall short, but I think a lot of these
in the
House, a lot of these are still not being called, and I think that the Republicans have a great shot of ending up with 51 Senate seats because Adam Laxalt feels good. I just talked to him about just trying to get the facts. What remains? It looks like the incumbent there, Catherine Cortez Masto, first Latina woman, she didn't really perform as well among Hispanics as she needed to. Clark County, it looks like she performed about 5%, but we have a lot of outstanding votes in Nevada. Harris, you take your ballot to the polling place. They have 280 silver boxes in Clark County alone, I believe. They're still looking at Washoe County, still looking at some of the rural votes. So we have to keep our eyes open on that.
Oh, real quickly, we had gotten word that they are working on putting together very soon, Maricopa County, a news conference. I want to get your thoughts just quickly on Arizona. Carrie Lake was someone who had, just so much momentum going in for the governor's race against Katie Hobbs. She sued a month ago.
Yes.
Carrie Lake did, saying that we need to go to paper ballots in the state of Arizona. Machines are going to fail. And we saw 20% of the 223 locations with those tabulation machines having trouble. We still don't know exactly the number. And as you and I talk about it, it's happening. Let's go live to Maricopa County right now, where they are updating the situation. What are they going to do to rectify the fact that people had to do it differently yesterday, and they are still counting? Let's watch.
Of that signature affidavit. Then we load that into our database and we review the signature. Once the signature is matched, we send it forward to a bipartisan ballot processing team. What that team is that team sits over there. It's a bipartisan team, different parties sitting across from each other, taking those ballots out of the green affidavit envelopes, making sure that the ballot isn't damaged, making sure that it's not torn, making sure that it doesn't have red ink on it, making sure that it doesn't have coffee on it, anything that would inhibit it from being tabulated. So as I mentioned, we've already processed those, and that was about 86,000. We've sent those ahead to the board for tabulation. Now, we also received approximately 50,000 early ballots on Monday. So those were dropped off and received on Monday. Those ballots are currently undergoing processing. So again, they've already undergone that signature review process. They've been signature verified. They've gone through that audit queue, and now they're with the bipartisan team. We will have those done today, and then they will be moved forward to, again, the board for tabulation. Finally, and this is the big number that is bigger than ever before, we received approximately 275,000 early ballots dropped off yesterday on Election Day. So that is what we were doing late last night. My team and I, if you saw us in the warehouse, we were receiving back those early ballots that are returned from the voting locations after the voting locations are closed. We're then sorting those. We're then processing those, we're sending them in, we're image capturing that signature, and what we will be doing today and tomorrow and the next day is we will be reviewing the signatures of all of those 275,000. Once they go through signature verification, once they are deemed good signature, once they go through an audit queue, then they can be sent ahead to the board for tabulation. This number is immense. And it's a conversation that...
Alrighty, so the main detail there is how much more counting they have to do and how many more ballots. He said 86,000 votes, signature reviewed. Now they're before a bipartisan review team and so on and so forth. Maricopa County is important in the count for Arizona. Kellyanne Conway back with me now. What is going on here? Republicans changed the laws down there. That's embarrassing for them. They can't count the same day?
I think the ballots were on the ballot yesterday, too. It's quite embarrassing when you can't do what Florida, Ohio, and I think Oregon does a pretty good job of count your early vote, and then you match the day of voting, and you tell us on election night, Harris, drum roll please, who prevailed in these races. Now, we all knew that from 2 years ago. We know Florida had, it was a laughing stock of the world after 2000 with the hanging chads and got their act together, invested. But all the state legislatures have to make this a priority because our one person, one vote is sacrosanct in the Constitution. It's the most equalizing factor for each of us is to have one vote no matter who we are. And people feel like that can be imperiled or they actually feel it's not as transparent. They don't understand. They're a little confused. We have to start investing in this. Look, Arizona under Governor Ducey, Republican state legislator, did a great thing on school choice and educational freedom. They ought to be able to do that on election. But let's be patient and wait for every legal vote to be counted.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have
in Arizona and Nevada and other places where some of these races are too close to call. I know a different network called it for Senator Ron Johnson in Wisconsin this morning, but it matters. We have to be patient and vigilant because our democracy deserves nothing less than that.
Yeah, just one other thing: the Secretary of State was running in this race.
Yes.
And that would be the person who's overseeing all of this. And the Republican Carrie Lake had pressed, can you get her to recuse herself from this process, the competitor Katie Hobbs. I don't know how we'll look at those issues going forward, but I just
that seemed like a very well-informed gentleman that you showed.
Yeah, and he told us what was going on.
We just need we need people like that just to tell us and to do it in a very nonpartisan, non-controversial way. Look, Katie Hobbs should have recused herself from counting the votes and not recuse herself from debating her opponent. Because if democracy is on the ballot, it demands that these candidates debate. You know why, Harris? That is the free of charge way that we, the voters, get.